right, good morning. Thank you everybody for being here today for our press conference regarding a cold case victim that has been nameless for over 40 years. We have a speaker sheet and a press release on the back table. Please feel free to grab one. Now, after our press conference, our speakers will be available for a few questions, but we do have our detectives here today to answer any follow-up questions or give one-on-one interviews. But first, I'd like to introduce Ventura County Sheriff Jim Freihoff.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here today. We are here to share the news that's been more than 45 years in the making. Today, thanks to our cold case unit, we finally have put a name to a young woman who for decades was known only as Jane Doe. On July 18th, 1980, deputies from our Thousand Oaks station responded to a call at the parking lot of Westlake High School where a young woman was found deceased. She had suffered multiple stab wounds, and the Ventura County medical examiner determined her death to be a homicide. She was also several months pregnant. Despite their efforts, detectives at the time were unable to identify the victim, and she became known as Jane Doe, Ventura County. Investigators were also unable to identify a suspect, and the case went cold, but it was never forgotten. 33 years later, advances in DNA technology gave investigators a new opportunity, and in 2013, a DNA profile was developed that identified the suspect. By that point, he was already serving a life sentence in California prison where he had been since September of 1980. And today we're here to announce the identification of Jane Doe, Ventura County, as Maricela Rocha Parga. Maricela was 22 years old at the time of her death. She was a resident of Los Angeles and was the second oldest of 9 children. She left behind a 2-year-old daughter. Many of her family members are here today. This outcome was made possible by the combined efforts of many agencies and organizations, including our Major Crimes Bureau, the Forensic Services Bureau here in the Ventura County Sheriff's Office, the Kern County Sheriff's Office, the Ventura County District Attorney's Office, our Medical Examiner's Office, the DNA Doe Project, National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. I'd like to take a moment to discuss the investigative persistence and dedication of our cold case unit and detectives and investigators over the years who finally closed this case and gave Maricela her name back. Many of those investigators that worked this case are here today as well. Even though this has been 45 years, a 45-year journey, this case was never forgotten and just placed on a shelf. Our Major Crimes Bureau, and more recently our Cold Case Task Force, continually looked at ways of solving this case and identifying Maricela. Technology finally caught up with a desire and has led to today's press conference. The identification and arrest and conviction of the murderer and the identification of Maricela and Shirley were made possible by advances in DNA technology. The current and primary investigator of this case, Araceli Ruiz Acevedo, spent the last 5 years painstakingly working on this case. She, along with her partners, traveled the country, interviewed distant and close relatives, obtained DNA samples. Through very detailed analysis and working with the DNA Doe Project, Maricela was identified. We also want to thank our partners at the Medical Examiner's Office for their critical role in achieving this outcome. On behalf of the Ventura County Sheriff's Office, I want to extend my deepest condolences to Maricela's family. We hope that today brings some measure of closure and comfort knowing that she was never forgotten and that her name, her story, and her life matter. At this time, I'd like to invite District Attorney Eric Nazarenko to say a few words.
Thank you, Sheriff Freihoff. In the summer of 1980, within days of being paroled for kidnapping and sexual assault in another case, the defendant began a series of horrific, violent crimes spanning 3 different counties. He raped and murdered a woman in Kern County, later referred to as Jane Doe, Ventura, Kern County, and left her body in an isolated almond orchard near Highway 99. 3 days later, he raped and killed again and disposed of the woman's body in Ventura County. That victim, known for decades as Jane Doe, Ventura County, was found in the upper parking lot of Westlake High School by a staff member, partially clothed, nearly 5 months pregnant, with multiple stab wounds. No identifying information was located on or near her. He then robbed, raped, and kidnapped a woman in Tulare County about 6 weeks later, for which he was convicted of and sentenced to life in prison that same year. At the time of the Tulare County convictions, authorities had not yet connected him to Jane Doe's Kern and Ventura counties. That would take decades of interagency collaboration and significant advances in DNA technology. First, in 2008, the Kern County Sheriff's Department learned that DNA recovered from Jane Doe, Kern County, matched the defendant in a nationwide DNA database of known criminal offenders and arrestees. Then, in early 2013, members of the Ventura County Cold Case Unit learned that DNA found on Jane Doe, Ventura County, matched to that same defendant. With this evidence in hand, our office filed multiple criminal charges, and the case proceeded to a jury trial. That jury found the defendant guilty of murdering both Jane Doe, Kern County, and Jane Doe, Ventura County, in the commission of a rape with the use of a deadly weapon, a knife. Thanks to the prosecutor, Senior Deputy District Attorney John Barrick, the defendant, who was already serving a life sentence, was sentenced to consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. But unlike many murder trials, where there are family members sitting in court and hearing the evidence, that didn't happen in this case because the victims' identities were still unknown. Not only had the defendant taken their lives, he had also wiped away their names, leaving family members longing and waiting for decades for answers about their loved ones and any knowledge about their whereabouts. Yes, we had secured convictions. Yes, we had ensured the defendant would never walk free again, but we did not have the victims' names and consequently had no way of notifying the families to help bring them some measure of justice and closure. That's where the DNA Doe Project came in. First, in 2020, 2021, they identified Jane Doe, Kern County as Shirley Sose. Then, through the extraordinary work of the Ventura County Cold Case Unit, working in conjunction with the DNA Doe Project, we are here today. As Sheriff Freihoff just mentioned, her name is Marisela Rocha Parga. She was a daughter, an aunt, a mother, a sister, and a niece. Her life was taken violently and suddenly, but today, after more than 45 years, her name and her identity are finally being restored. What was taken has now been returned to Marisela and her family. I had an opportunity this morning to meet with Marisela's family, many of whom have traveled a significant distance to be here this morning from states as far away as Texas and Florida. They shared with us who Marisela was: independent, loving, and caring. At the time of her disappearance, she was a waitress living in downtown Los Angeles, attending school in the evening and studying to be a nurse. The family became concerned and alarmed when a 10-year-old sister of Maricela was due to have a birthday party, and Maricela was tasked with bringing the birthday cake. She never showed up, and she was never seen or heard from again. Lastly, we owe a debt of gratitude to our federal partners, specifically Congressmembers Carbajal and Brownlee. Recently, Congressmember Carbajal secured a $700,000 grant for genetic genealogy testing of unidentified and missing persons. And Congresswoman Brownlee obtained $900,000 to help automate DNA processing. This funding will allow the cold case unit to pursue more violent crimes and give more victims back their name. It is my honor and pleasure to introduce DNA Doe Project team member Rebecca Summerhalder.
Good morning. My name is Rebecca Summerhalder, and I served as team leader on the case for DNA Doe Project. We are a nonprofit organization that provides investigative genetic genealogy research pro bono to restore names to Jane and John Does. When the Ventura County Sheriff's Office first contacted us back in July of 2018, the field of investigative genetic genealogy was in its infancy. Our identification of a Jane Doe known as Buckskin Girl had been announced 3 months prior, followed just a few weeks later by the arrest of the Golden State Killer, thanks to the work done by Dr. Barbara Ray-Venter. As the Ventura County Sheriff's Office was at the cutting edge of the new forensic tool, Ventura County Jane Doe became one of our first ever cases, and in October of 2018 we began our research. What we didn't know then is that this would eventually become the toughest and the most intensive identification in the history of our organization. We quickly realized that Jane Doe was of Mexican descent, which made our research very challenging. This is because people of Latin American descent are underrepresented in the databases we have access to, meaning we tend to have only distant DNA matches in this work in Hispanic cases. In this case, we also had to deal with a lack of records and multiple adoptions within the family tree, severely hindering our progress. To overcome this, our team had to build family trees many generations back in time to connect distant DNA matches, ultimately assembling a tree containing 125,000 individuals. And this is over the course of 7 years. More than 40 DNA Doe Project volunteers worked on this case over time. We developed many of hours they devoted many of their hours of time pro bono in an effort to give Ventura County Jane Doe her real name back. Investigators from the Ventura County Sheriff's Office worked tirelessly alongside our team to follow up leads and to gather additional information to aid our research, which their hard work proving invaluable to our efforts. Finally, the team began to zero in on the family of the unidentified woman, a couple born in the late 1800s in the Mexican state of Zacatecas, were identified as the likely great-grandparents of Ventura County Jane Doe, at which point the team and investigators began tracking down their descendants. On December the 9th, 2025, investigators spoke with a great-grandson of this couple, and he shared some critical information. His sister, Maricela Rocha Parga, had been missing since 1980. Further DNA testing later confirmed that the woman formerly known as Ventura County Jane Doe was indeed Maricela. It was an honor to work with the Ventura County Sheriff's Office on this case, first with Detective Steve Rhodes and later with Investigator Araceli Reese Acevedo and Detective Aaron Glass. This case touched the hearts of many people over so many years, and we are very proud to have helped give Maricela back her name. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We will now take any questions for our speakers here. Again, we do have our detectives in the back that can give any follow-up interviews or one-on-one interviews, I should say, along with the Spanish-speaking PIO.
You have the Highway 33 John Doe, Piru Jane Doe. It seems like more and more people are being identified lately. Is this through the additional funding? Is this through the cold case task force? Is it a collaboration of efforts? Why so many cases so recently?
Yeah, thank you, Grant. Yes, yes, and yes. This is due to the funding that we're receiving from our federal partners that allow this to take place. It's through the advancements in DNA technology, and it's through the hard work of the cold case unit and the DNA DOE project, worked by our medical examiner's office, our DA's office, that work collaboratively to make sure that we give the people their name back and let the families know we have some sense of closure.
Can you give us the reaction of the family, and would any of them like to speak at this point?
I have investigators that can tell you what their reaction was, and we do have at least one family member who would like to speak. No, that changed. So we know there are no family members who want to speak at this time.
Could you talk about the advances? I mean, what's changed in the last couple of years in the technology that's allowed us to get to this point, even a half, five or 6 years ago?
I'm going to let the DA handle that question with the genetic genealogy.
Lance, there have been several advancements. Let me just point out a few of them. One is forensic investigative genetic genealogy, what the DNA DOE project does, using family mapping and family trees, uploading into publicly available databases DNA, and then working back from third, second, fourth cousins to see if a match can be found. We also have the ability in 2026 to amplify and extract DNA in ways that in the past we could not. That is, to take sheets, clothing, samples, and actually find through it male DNA profiles, and then upload it into the combined DNA index system, and then thereafter be able to develop and use a profile. So these are advances that benefit law enforcement, bring closure to families. And I'll just give you one other example. In the past, oftentimes we'd come across reports that would show that the DNA was too diluted or there was too much of a mixture. Now we're able to extract and amplify that DNA and really get the profiles that help us to solve cases.
We've had a number of cases like this in the last couple of months. Any idea of how many are in the pipeline right now you guys are working on?
The investigators would be able to probably better answer that. Lance, I'll let them answer that.
I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about what the system was back then as far as, excuse me, as far as databases is here, we have a family who has a loved one matching XYZ description. Here the sheriff's office has a person that they found matching this description. What was the system at that point as far as matching those two?
Well, remember 45 years ago, there was no internet. The communication between agencies was not as robust as it is now. The ability to share information across agency lines was not nearly as robust. The technology, both actual technology, DNA technology, have allowed us to develop these databases, our CODIS, their DNA profiles, so that we can start bringing closure. We're just very fortunate that in 1980, our officers that were working then knew enough to collect evidence that they had no idea that it was going to be used later. And so we're very fortunate, along with our partners in the medical examiner's office, to retain those samples so that we could test them later on and bring closure or close cases, either identifying suspects or in some cases clearing suspects. Grant, yeah.
Is it more difficult to prosecute a case when a victim hasn't been identified? And what role does that play after identification?
Thanks to the Senior Deputy District Attorney in this case, John Barrick, we were able to adopt, that is, take Jane Doe, Kern County, consolidate it with Jane Doe, Ventura County, add enhancements, that is, life without the possibility of parole enhancements, and really bring this forward to a jury in 2018. Now, they returned guilty verdicts. They found that the murders were done in the commission of rapes. They also found true that a knife was used as a deadly weapon in the rapes. So we had the ability to move forward, but we did not have the ability to notify next of kin, family, those who would have an interest in knowing what took place, who did this, and seeing firsthand the justice system deliver accountability and consequences. So this is delayed, but nevertheless necessary. This family has waited over 45 years to know what happened to Maricela. And today they are learning, they are uncovering, and we all have an intention as law enforcement to make sure that we continue to pursue vigorously these cases, both in terms of prosecution and identification of the unknown. Because there's a daughter who's now in her mid-40s. Maricela was her mom. This is information that we believe will help her, the family, and all survivors of horrific violence.
All right, thank you. That concludes our press conference today. Thank you, everybody, for coming. If you would like to speak with one of our detectives, I'll make sure to partner you up.